Good to have Albert Breer on with us again, and with Johnsy this time. Johnsy's here, too. One of the things we've been we have these conversations, the Super Bowl every year, different feels about kind of how the Bears have evolved year to year, and it's just like the overwhelming thing we keep coming back to, it seems like this week, seems to be a lot of belief around the league about what Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams accomplished this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's really fair, and I think it's about more than just those two. It's the infrastructure that was put in place. I think, the guys that were there, Ryan Poles, Ian Cunningham before he left, Jeff King. It's interesting because at the end of the Eberflus era, I think that there was a little bit of I think I'm looking at a good team, but it's not coming together. And I think, what Ben Johnson and his staff were able to do was unlock a bunch of that. And it's oh yeah, we were right about Montez Sweat. Oh yeah, we were right about DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. And, obviously part of that's the coaching. Part of that is taking care of the offensive line in the offseason the way that they did. But, yeah, it looks like there's a really good infrastructure there going forward. The young quarterback got better over the course of time. And we saw, the way that they were able to win at the end of games, against the Giants in the snow. Even the way they came back in that Rams game with the prayer at the end to Cole Kmet. It's the quarterback's playing well down the stretch of games. He's consistently improving. It looks like he's got a good group around him that's going to be sustainable for at least the next couple of years. And they're going to have a little flexibility to go bring some people in. So I think there's a lot to like there.
One thing we're not used to is, other teams coming into the Bears to poach, your assistant general manager, your offensive coordinator. Yeah. Al Harris, the secondary coach, had a few interviews around the league. What do you make of that? And I guess we could even go through the list. Ian Cunningham getting the job in Atlanta. Then you have Declan Doyle going to Baltimore.
Yeah. That's just the natural attrition that happens when you have some success. And I think, when you hire someone like Ben Johnson who's in demand and people want a piece of that system and have wanted that piece of that system for 3 years, and now you've got it, and now it works, right?
Yeah.
The next step is, well, how do I get that even though I can't get Ben Johnson? And the answer is going to be, I'm going to pluck his assistants. And so, there's that element of it too. Now, I'd say Ben's a little bit more of a one-of-one guy anyway. And I think what he does, and you saw at Detroit this year, is pretty hard to replicate. And so, I don't know that it's going to be as damaging to the Bears as it is to other teams when this happens. But this is just, I think, part of the natural process of breaking through the way the Bears did with a coach who, was such a hot name for a number of years.
You mentioned flexibility here for the next couple of years with Caleb Williams on a rookie contract. Obviously, this is a big offseason. Bears trying to make that next jump, not just be this 1 year Bears teams have had in years past, 2018, and then it falls out. So my question, and a lot of Bears questions, is can they get the big-ticket pass rusher? The pass rush, you said Montez Sweat certainly had a bounce-back year, but they need a lot more from the pass rush. Is Maxx Crosby a realistic option? Is this something Bears fans should be thinking about or move on from?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a conversation for Vegas, and I know that, that thing was not in a good place end of December, beginning of January, and so they don't have their head coach there yet, so it's hard to say unequivocally the way that they're going to be moving forward is X, Y, or Z if you don't know who the head coach is, who the defensive coordinator is. Look, when Klint Kubiak arrives there on Monday, Tuesday, whenever it is, and he's able to wrangle Jim Schwartz from Cleveland, which I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's a name on his list. Now all of a sudden does Maxx Crosby look at it and reassess and say, he just had a guy who broke the sacks record. Maybe I should stay here, So I don't think that thing is completely irreparably harmed. Max does put stock and does love being a Raider and loves the history of it. And I think, he's almost hurt, the way that went down at the end. So, I certainly think it's something that's on everyone's radar. But until the new staff is in place and has met and gone through meetings with the GM there, John Spytek, it's hard to say, yes, absolutely.
Are there any other pass rushers you think might be traded? Like, how would you describe what that?
Where can we get our Joe Tooney from the offensive line?
I mean, the easy one for one, like as far as that goes, might be Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
If you're talking about an older guy where you're betting on track record, he's been a really good player over the years. He's beat up last year. You could argue some of that was maybe him pacing himself a little bit based on the contract situation and the way things had gone there in Cincinnati. But, Trey would be one where you would look at him and say, okay, like there's a long track record here. Yes, he's older, but we can at least get a year or two of production out of him. And then, maybe you draft somebody in the first round to throw in the group, so.
And there's that connection to Dennis Allen.
And there's the connection to Dennis Allen. So there are other ways to make it work other than just Maxx Crosby. But, I mean, though, that position isn't, as you guys know, an easy one to fill. When you have a great one, you generally don't let him go.
Yep.
When I'm trying to figure out if Maxx Crosby would actually be traded, I keep coming back to, and maybe you can help with this. Like, I'm just confused at what Tom Brady's role actually is. Like when he's involved,
boss.
when he's not, he's the boss. But because I just think about Brady, and you know him better because of covering him. But that doesn't seem like a move Tom Brady would want to make, is trade one of the best pass rushers in the league. But I don't know why I think that. I'm just trying to figure out, when does his influence, when conversations factor into personnel decisions?
Well, he was part of that, whole thing, the issue that they had there in December. So I think part of the equation, if you were going to bring him back, was, maybe some fence mending on that end, too, between Brady and Crosby. So, I still think that there's, a lot of conversation that has to happen there. And I think it's definitely possible that they wind up reconciling and Klint's able to go in there and calm the waters and they come with some sort of agreement to bring him back. That said, they don't have to shop him. The calls are going to come, so they're going to know what his value is to other teams because other teams look at it right now. He's part of every contending team that needs a pass rusher. Maxx Crosby is being discussed in their meetings. And so, because there's the at least perception that he could be available. So whether the Raiders decide we're going to shop him or not, they're going to have something to weigh keeping him against, right? Whether that's one first-round pick, whether that's a first-round pick and something else, whatever it is, those offers are going to come in. That's going to happen organically now because there's a perception out there that he's available. It's sort of the same way Stephon Diggs got traded from Minnesota to Buffalo all of those years ago. I don't know if people from Chicago know that story, but that started with a tweet. Diggs tweeted something really cryptic and weird, and Brandon Beane, the Bills general manager, saw it, and they started to investigate, and then they called the Vikings. By the end of the day, he was traded. So, a lot of times that's how these things can happen, And so if there's, even a whiff of there being discontent on the player's end, then teams are going to call. And so for the Raiders, they can just sit there and, let's see where we go with the relationship with Crosby. But now, instead of it just being well, maybe we can get this or maybe we get that, but we don't want to call around the league and shop him because we don't want to offend him. Now, they don't have to shop him. Yep. Those calls are going to come in.
Can we go back to Atlanta and Ian Cunningham for a second? What's your understanding about how that structure works? You have president of football, Matt Ryan, but he says he's not doing too much. But
it's not. I mean, if you guys have an idea how Jacksonville worked this year with Tony Baselli as the over-the-top guy, and I think it's sort of similar in that when part of the problem the Jaguars had over the years was too many cooks in the kitchen, and there have been infighting, and it's different than Atlanta because in Jacksonville, Shad Khan isn't around a lot, doesn't live there. And so I think they felt like there were things that needed to be officiated there, and they needed somebody to kind of set the agenda and keep everybody aligned. And, if there was a need to break a tie. And obviously it's a legendary player for them. Chris Spielman's role in Detroit is a little different, but, is sort of the same, where his job when he came in was to get everybody aligned, to get everybody on the same page. They've had so many moving parts in Atlanta where, Rich McKay is in the football operation. Now he's not. Now he is. Who answers to who? And there was just sort of this feeling that there was a little chaotic just as far as the chain of command in the football building, which, by the way, is separate from the business operation there. So, I think what Matt's job is now is to make sure that the organization is aligned and that everybody's on the same page. And now he can take that where he wants. I think a huge part of it for him is going to be knowing what he doesn't know, and I've heard that he does. But knowing what you don't know in that role is huge. That's what John Elway faced in Denver, and I think one of the things that people really respected about Elway there was that he did the work and he learned how to be a scout, and eventually he became kind of difficult to work for. But at the beginning, he really cared about being good at the job, and that's been an open question with Brady, and that's going to be a question with Matt Ryan now. But I think the overall idea is that Ian Cunningham is going to be a head of scouting, general manager. Matt Ryan is going to be there to take things off of his plate, make sure coaching and scouting is aligned, and everybody is sort of working in the same direction. And
in that regard, in terms of infrastructure, you talked about with Chicago. And so my question is, fans are pretty tough in Chicago. And Ryan Poles can't do every pick that's wrong is Ryan Poles' fault. All the picks are right are now Ben Johnson's grace. And Kevin Warren can't do anything right until he figures out this stadium ordeal. So my question to you, because you're as close to anybody in terms of national analysts of this Bears organization, what is your perception or the perception around the league of how Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren have been a big part of what's going on, bringing Ben Johnson here, turning this organization around this year?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is the 4 conference finalists were all arranged marriages. Les Snead was there. Jeff Fisher gets fired. Sean McVay inherits Les Snead. Elliott Wolf was there in New England. Gerard Mayo gets fired. Mike Vrabel inherits Elliott Wolf. John Schneider was with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll gets fired. Mike McDonald inherits John Schneider. And then in Denver, of course, George Payton was there. Nathaniel Hackett gets fired. And then Sean Payton inherits George Payton. So these things have started to work. I think that there's the view that Ryan was all along a good talent evaluator, and that he could check that box, right? He was really good at it. He was a little green in the job to begin with, and there was a little bit of a learning curve there, and it's a big job, And I think he and Ian Cunningham were sort of learning on the job together because they had such similar backgrounds. They were both kind of rooted in scouting, and so I think there was a little bit of having to learn for both of them, being at the top of the masthead. And now we're running the entire football operation. But I think as far as the talent evaluation part of it, it's been pretty good. And I think this year showed the fruits of that, right? So now you got a pretty good team that's been rebuilt from the end of the Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy era. And I think because of all of that, he's seen as somebody who grew into the job.
And Kevin Warren, to add on to that, everything turns around. Yes, he doesn't have a stadium get done, but he cuts a pretty big check to Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
If Kevin Warren's not here, and you talked about infrastructure, is Ben Johnson even the head coach of it? Everybody says, he'd have came no matter what because of Caleb Williams. But I also think the infrastructure was important.
I think he also wanted – I think his family wanted to stay in the Midwest. That was part of it. I think they had a good experience with the kids in Detroit. And so, going from Chicago to Detroit.
He's a Cubs fan.
Yeah, there was part of it. Was he a Tigers fan before that? I don't even know.
No, he's a bleacher bum. He's been a Cubs fan his whole life.
Okay, so, but he, I don't know. Ben had a lot of things that were factors for him. And the infrastructure was a factor. The region of the country was a factor. The quarterback was a factor. I think above all else, he wanted to go to a place where he thought his vision could be carried out. And that's really what he observed in Detroit. Dan Campbell had a very specific vision for how the Lions would be built. And the Lions have drafted exceptionally well with Dan Campbell there as the head coach. And part of that's the general manager, Brad Holmes. But a big part of it is having a coach who's got a very defined vision of what he's looking for. And so having observed that, I think for Ben Johnson, a lot of it was, how can I get to a place that's going to be able to help me carry out my vision?
Well, the last thing I have for you on that one with Ben is when this drama played out with Matt LaFleur, there seemed to be this conversation that started like, well, is he causing some friction with like the entire Sean McVay coaching tree here? Like, have you heard any of that? Like, is Ben Johnson not making friends around the league with some of the stuff? And it doesn't matter at all.
I think the Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur thing is a specific Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur thing. We all had fun with it, with the McVay part of it and everything else. I think it's a very specific LaFleur Johnson thing. I don't think it's like the entire coaching tree.
Before we let you go quickly, Matt Nagy is getting his second chance to call plays, be in charge of an offense in New York with John Harbaugh. I'm just curious of what you thought about his quest to be a head coach again, but ultimately ending up as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like that. That was a tough break for him, the way that all went down with Tennessee and everything else. But I think he's a really good coach. He's reflected a lot on what went wrong for him in Chicago. You guys know him. He's a good guy, deep down. And I think like there's a piece of this where he has really refined, his vision for where he wants to take it when he gets another shot. And so of course it was disappointing, that he didn't get that second shot now after going back to Kansas City and being the coordinator for a couple of Super Bowl teams. So I don't know where that goes next, but with what he already has on his resume, if the Giants go like this, and if Jackson Dart is what they think he can be, then I think Matt Nagy will have another opportunity. And I do think the Titans people, I think they're going to help him too, because I think he was a prime candidate. He was right there with Robert Saleh. So, I do think as far as just references and everything else, the Titans people will probably help him in that regard as well.
My final thing, because I know you're extremely busy, so I really appreciate your time, but the stadium is obviously a big talking point, and it might be when we get to the Combine. Rubber might meet the road by the time we get to Indianapolis. So I'm curious, Roger Goodell was in town when the Bears were in the playoffs, and there was pictures of them touring different places. What is your perception of what's going on, the reality that the Bears might be in Indiana, and does the NFL want the Bears in Indiana? Does George McCaskey want the Bears in Indiana?
I think ideally you'd be in the city, but you'd be in the city on your terms. I think that's the way that most NFL owners look at it. And I think the way you have to view these things, and it sucks, but it is what it is, these are land deals. You know what I mean? These are all, how can I build a stadium where I can monetize at every single level? So it's not about the 10 football games that you're going to have in that stadium. It's about, can I get a Final Four here? Can I get a Super Bowl here? Can I put 15 different concerts here that are all big box events? Is there real estate around it that I can develop? And that's money, if I'm the owner, I don't have to share with the players, right? So I think there's this, that's what you're seeing more and more now. It's what you saw in Kansas City. I think football should be played outside. I love the scene in Chicago for the playoffs. I got those two playoff games, just an unbelievable scene. And it sucks that the league could be stripped of those sorts of things. I was in Denver for the AFC Championship game. What an incredible atmosphere that was. But it's just not the way of the world now. And I think the easiest way to kind of, break that down is pretty simple. 20 years ago, new stadiums were opening at a price tag of $250, $300, $350 million. Now they're 2 or 3 billion. And so it's gotten to the point where owners can no longer justify the cost of building a stadium for 10 football games. So now they got to put a million different events in those stadiums. And if you're putting a million different events in those stadiums, it probably means that unless you want to spend a ton of money on natural grass, which most of them don't want to, you're laying down artificial turf and you're putting a roof over it. And if you're doing that, you're going to need space to do it. You're going to need parking because it's going to be more than those 10 events a year. And if you're buying big parcels of land, now you're going to want to monetize the land. And
they'll get all my money.
It's and they have us. That's the thing. Is they have us, but it's it grows into like they want everyone's money.
Yep.
So like the same way you'll go to that game for a Bears game, or go to that stadium for a Bears game.
They need the Taylor Swift fan.
Like I mean, if you guys have daughters, your daughters will go there for a Taylor Swift concert. That's the concept of it. And it again, like I really love football outside in the cold.
Same.
I love the atmosphere of it in the city. I think what you guys have in Chicago is so unique, and I don't even know if people there realize how unique it is, because there aren't very many teams that play in settings like that one.
It's a home field advantage.
Right, like settings like that one in a city. But I'll be sad when it goes away, but that's not going to sway. That's going to sway billionaires.
Doesn't it feel predictable that, like 20 years from now, though, we're going to be looking at how many indoor stadiums are in the league, and it's going to swing the other way. And then because the whole league just going to start playing indoor football.
And my other thing, too, is they're all starting to look like the Raiders Stadium. I want them, like the Minnesota Stadium is beautiful, but it's unique because it's different. These cookie cutter stadiums, that better not be the future of the NFL.
Buckle up.
Jesus. All right, final prediction, Indiana or Illinois for the Chicago Bears?
Illinois.
If you had to predict.
Illinois. I mean, what do you guys think?
He thinks Indiana.
I'm just saying it's not a bluff.
Yeah.
It is real. They're getting a real offer from Indiana that's going to be hard to turn down.
I don't know. I was in high school when Robert Kraft used the exact same playbook. Yeah. Threatened to go to Providence, then threatened to go to Hartford, Connecticut. Actually had a press conference with the governor of Connecticut with drawings of the stadium and we are gone and all that different stuff. And then Foxborough. then Massachusetts agreed to fund a footbridge over the highway that the stadium's on, and it was done.
Which is probably what's going to happen in Illinois. Illinois will get its blank together and they'll figure it out. Probably. We'll see. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep.